Hey there, Amanda from the Happy Homestead. The garden is producing like crazy. And so it's this time of year, which is late summer, kind of like middle to late summer, that you really want to get as much as you can from your garden. And so one of the ways we do that is certainly fresh eating, but also freezing and preserving. And so today I am going to make some pesto. And I'm going to freeze it into ice cube trays, and then you can pop those ice cubes out and then put them in a freezer bag, freezer safe Ziploc bag, and leave it in your freezer for whenever you need homemade pesto. So we're going to grab our basil from the garden, and then we'll get started on making the pesto. And I've got one more ingredient that I'm excited to show you. Okay, so we're just gonna wash the basil. I did notice some caterpillar damage on some of the leaves. So that is why I wanted to get to it first. And look, actually I found a caterpillar. You see him? He's on my pinky. Yeah. This is also why we wash our basil. They'll float to the top. And there's a slug. When you organically garden, guys, you're gonna get bugs. It's okay, don't freak out. Just wash your harvest and you'll be all right. But basil is one of my favorite things to grow. It's really not hard to grow. And, you know, full transparency here, I did not start this from seed. I actually bought this from a local organic plant sale that our town has every year. It's called Herb Fest. And they grow and sell all organic herbs and plants. And I get my basil there every year. See how dirty that water was? Yeah, that's why we're doing this. The basil is so versatile because it's delicious, fresh, right? Like in a caprese salad with tomatoes and mozzarella, chopped up over just about any Italian dish, and then pesto. Okay. I think that's pretty good. And so let's spin that out. Try to do it twice just to make sure I get everything nice and dry. Okay, excellent. Let's go get this prepped. Okay, so our basil is washed and ready. So if you remember, maybe you don't remember, but there are 5 ingredients in pesto. And this is traditional pesto, right? So you've got your basil, fresh basil, pine nuts or some kind of nut, Parmesan cheese, garlic, olive oil. Those are the 5 main ingredients within pesto. And of course you can add salt and pepper. You can add lemon juice. You can add a little crushed red pepper, right? You can change it up, and people make pesto with different herbs too, like they might add chives to it or maybe fresh oregano. Like there's so many variations, but the primary basic pesto is that 5 ingredients. So we've got our fresh basil. I don't have pine nuts and I thought about going to buy some, but nah, use what you got. That's the whole point, right? And I have something that I actually do need to use that we got. So we have black walnuts. I harvested these black walnuts last summer from our property. We have about 5 to 7 really mature black walnut trees. I'm talking 40, 50 feet high, like really big trees. And so last summer I learned how to harvest them and how to husk them or hull them rather, and get the walnut meat out. So I froze them. As soon as I had gotten the meat out, I froze them. So I have about a quart here, and we're gonna toast these black walnuts. So whatever nut you use, whether it be a pine nut or a walnut, you're gonna wanna toast it a little bit. It really helps bring out that flavor. And then we'll make our pesto. So let's get these in the oven. All right, I just have a cookie sheet here with parchment paper. I preheated my oven to 375. You see the different variations in the color? The darker pieces are actually not that great. And that is because some of them weren't fully mature when they harvested. They almost feel like paper. Yeah, like this one. I'm just gonna grab some of those out. Now, like I said, you can use almonds, you can use regular walnuts, black walnuts, pine nuts. I wouldn't use cashews because they're probably a little too soft. Okay. All right, so let's get these toasted. This is only gonna take maybe 10 minutes. So the walnuts are toasting and I've got everything ready. I am going to use a food processor today to make the pesto. I highly recommend you do that. I think you can use like a bullet or a high-speed blender if you have one of those. To me, the food processor makes it so much easier. Not only just the actual process of masticating the basil and chopping everything up, but also getting it out. It might not be as easy to get out of a blender. So if you don't have either one of those, hand chopping is perfectly fine. All right, let's get our garlic in first. Now guys, I do not follow a particular recipe with amounts, so you'll just have to bear with me on that. I'm just gonna smash the garlic a bit because it helps the paper come off and it releases all of the good phytonutrients. This is probably the hardest part right here of making pesto. It's just peeling the garlic. And again, I'm not measuring, I'm just kind of eyeballing everything. I did not even measure out my basil as I was harvesting it, right? I was just getting all of the good basil I could get. So normally while I'm making it, and you'll see like in the food processor, you wanna make sure you have a good ratio of everything. So if it's looking really green, right, I'll add some more nuts. I'm not gonna add everything in all at once. I'm gonna add the nuts probably slowly so I can keep an eye on the ratio and just make sure it looks good. I'm also not gonna add my Parmesan cheese in today. Now again, that's what traditional pesto has in it, is Parmigiano Reggiano. I don't do that in the freezer just because. Okay. So I'm trying to think, why don't I add it? So I can actually explain that to you. guess 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't really find it necessary when I'm freezing my pesto. If I'm using it for fresh eating right then and there or within the next day or 2, I'll certainly add it. But I guess when I'm freezing in the cubes, I just don't find I need to do it. And number 2, the other reason going along with number 1 is that whenever I pull out a cube to cook with, I'm probably gonna add Parmesan cheese to that dish at that time. So I try not to double dip with the Parmesan, right? You might like that, that's okay. But that's kind of my thought process there. So this is not gonna have the Parmesan in it today. All right, let's start with chopping up the garlic. Whenever I am making anything in the food processor with garlic, I always chop the garlic first by itself. I find that it just creates a much more evenly chopped garlic that way. All right, let's go ahead and start adding some of our basil here. I try not to get too many stems, like the big stems here. But again, this is not a perfect science. I always like to say with cooking, it's like, you just wing it. That's kind of how I operate in the kitchen. With cooking, it's like experimenting. It's fun, combinations. Whereas with baking, to me, that is much more science. I feel like baking, you almost have to be more methodical with what you're doing. Just double checking my stems here, because otherwise I'm going to throw this whole bunch in. Okay, so I think we've got all the basil. All right, let's check our walnuts. They've been in for 8 minutes. I can smell them. So you may notice with whatever nut you choose, a browning, right? And that's how obviously they're toasted because they're a little bit browned. I can see that on some of these small pieces. But I do not want to risk burning them. So I'm actually just going to turn the oven off and leave them there for a little bit, because they'll still cook up a bit, but I think that's perfect. And again, that was 8 minutes. All right, the walnuts are toasted. I let them sit in the pan for maybe 10 minutes. I'm going to add about half of them in. And salt and pepper. And again, I am just eyeballing and creating. Now I'm gonna drizzle in the olive oil as we process. Turn it on. I also don't put nearly as much olive oil in also when I'm freezing. And again, the reason is because normally when I'm cooking, there's going to be some sort of fat, whether it be olive oil, avocado oil, or something else. So again, just not double dipping on all the oil. So my pesto, I mean, there's some pieces that still need to be chopped up, but looking at the consistency is perfect. Now I'm gonna add the rest of my walnuts because I don't want them to go to waste, but I'm gonna add more oil too, but so far I love how it looks. walnut stuck somewhere. Under the blade, maybe. Yep, I did. Okay. But that looks so good. And guys, if you could smell it, oh my gosh. It smells amazing. So now what we're gonna do is get our ice cube tray and start spooning it in. And what's so great about this, not only does it take hardly any time, but you can do it throughout the summer, right? As you see that you have a lot of basil, you don't have to wait at any point in time during the year to do this or during the summer gardening season. Now I'm pressing it down tight because I really do want it to be able to pop out like an ice cube. I'm trying to remove any air pockets that would be in there. And it's kind of like a concentrated pesto, right? We didn't even add the cheese, and there's not as much oil. As you can see, it's pretty thick. That's how I like it. Because again, you don't even need a lot when you pull it out to cook with it. And you'll be adding all of those other delicious flavors when you do cook with it. The black walnuts, I can smell them. It smells so good. Yeah, so I had to use them up because the black walnuts are starting to fall for this year at the property. Not totally yet, but I saw a couple immature ones fall. So I know that the other ones are coming probably within the next couple of weeks. So I wanted to use those black walnuts up before we get more. So I never buy pesto. If you do this and keep them in the freezer, you literally will not have to, right? You can have your delicious homemade pesto. I think one ice cube tray is just enough. So this will go in the freezer. I'll leave it there overnight, 24 hours, and then pop each of the cubes out tomorrow, and then just put it in a freezer or a Ziploc bag. That's it. Okay, a little bit left here. I'm not wasting any of this. And that's it. All right, I'm gonna get this in the freezer. And that's it. You've just made some pesto that can last you throughout the year. How easy was that? Seriously, all you gotta do is harvest it, put everything in the food processor, chop it up, and put it in the freezer. So simple. Now, this is a Ziploc bag that I have had in our freezer for I don't even know how many years. I just reuse the same bag. But here are the cubes. So these are last year's cubes, and there are quite a few left, probably about 15 left. I made this, I think, 3 times last year. But let me show you. I just washed my hands, but I'll just get my hands dirty again. So here's how they look, right? So here's a cube. I can see that better. This one's stuck together, 3 cubes stuck together. But they just stay in the baggie that way, and I literally just pull out what I need when I'm cooking. Now, when I'm pulling it out, right, depending on what I'm using it for, I might pull it out a couple of hours in advance and just put it in a bowl and leave it on the counter to soften up. I don't usually throw the ice cube into the saute pan because that then just changes the whole temperature of whatever you're cooking, right? If you're trying to get a good sear or whatnot. So I don't actually throw the ice cube into the pan. I do take it out a couple of hours prior to actually kneading it so it does soften up, and then I can add more oil to it since it's still going to be a pretty thick consistency, or the parmesan, you know, salt and pepper, whatever else I want to add to it. Hope you found this helpful, and I hope you'll try it. It's all about using what you have in your garden and your house to make it work for you, and try to avoid always going to the store every day or every week. Let me know what you think. Stay healthy, stay well. See you next time.